Do you know that you might have Nephilim blood running through your veins? In 1911, newspapers reported the discovery of giant skeletons in a cave in Lovelock, Nevada, some measuring over 9 feet tall. But as quickly as they were found, they vanished. The official backstory runs deep, far deep into uncountable millennia back in time. Where did those giant bones come from? What if they belong to the descendants of the Nephilim? And if they do, how did the Nephilim escape the Great Flood and survive till this day? Imagine this. The rain is falling heavily. The floodwaters are rising above buildings and every existing structure. The only thing afloat the volume of water is an ark. Noah's Ark. This large boat carries the last refuge of uncorrupted humanity and floats atop the world that is being wiped clean. However, beneath the surface of this divine plan, there might have been a loophole. One that reveals that maybe not everyone on that ark was uncorrupted. One or more carried the Nephilim bloodline aboard. According to the Jewish text called the Book of Jasher, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. While this information is not new, the Book of Jasher reveals that the 3 sons of Noah were already married before the ark was built, but nothing is said about their wives. We know nothing about the women whom the sons of Noah married. No names, no lineages, and no origin stories. Just 3 anonymous women brought aboard. Could it be that one or more of these women carried Nephilim DNA? What if they were not giants themselves, but mere carriers of a diluted strain? Think about it. There were countless unholy unions between fallen angels and the daughters of men. Many rabbinic commentaries suggest that Ham's wife may have descended from one of these unholy unions. And for a bigger catch, what if it wasn't just Ham's wife, but his brother's spouses as well? This would mean that the ark did not just save the lives of Noah's family, but also preserved the very bloodline God intended to destroy. And this is where things get interesting. Genetic dilution. This means that traits don't just vanish in one generation. What if the Nephilim DNA has been passed down in trace amounts through the ages? Although dormant, it is still present, re-emerging in sudden ways. You see it in abnormally tall stature, unusual strength, and psychological anomalies. Perhaps the flood did not end the Nephilim story. What if it restarted it? It does not end here. When we consider what happened after the flood, the theory gains even more traction, specifically what happened with Ham, Noah's youngest son. In Genesis chapter 9, we are told that Ham saw his father's nakedness while Noah was drunk with wine. Not only did he witness the sight of his father's nudity, but he shared it with his brothers. When Noah was sober, he became furious and cursed Canaan, the son of Ham. In his words, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." Since the Bible does not explain why such a harsh punishment was given for an offense so vague, it seems that there was more to the pronouncement. Many researchers believe that the curse was not about disrespect. Rather, it represents bloodline contamination, with the Nephilim ranking high in that regard. How, you ask? Centuries later, we see the Canaanites, the descendants of Canaan, son of Ham, producing giant offspring as well. In no time, the children of Israel began to encounter Anakim and Rephaim, a tribe of giants descending from the Canaanites. We see this when Moses sent Hebrew spies to look over the land of Canaan. Their report was chilling. In Numbers chapter 13, 31-33, they reported, "We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. and we looked the same to them. Wait, did they say Nephilim? You heard that right, Nephilim. And this happened centuries after the Great Flood, which was meant to wipe out every trace of the Nephilim from Earth's surface. The spies testified that they saw the descendants of Anak who came from the Nephilim, and they lived in Canaan, Ham's land. This brings us back to the curse laid on Ham after he saw his father's nakedness. What if the curse was not random? Could it be that it was the result of a hidden inheritance? One dormant gene passed through his wife and manifested again in the post-flood world. If not, do we call it a coincidence that the land of Canaan became the hotspot for giants? Or did the Nephilim DNA that thrived on the ark finally find room to grow again? We know. This theory almost sounds like blasphemy to the ears. Else, what do you call Noah's lineage that was described as perfect in Genesis 6:9? It was said that Noah was perfect in his generations. This would mean that not one unholy breath could be found in Noah's lineage, both in his past and present. In addition, we see how infuriated God was over the abominable relationship between the sons of God and the daughters of men. We see this expressed anger of God in more apocryphal texts, like the Book of Enoch. In the Book of Enoch, chapter 10, verse 11 to 13, we read, "And the Lord said unto Michael, Go, bind Semjaza and his associates who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated." This is how angry the Lord was towards the union between the fallen angels and women on the earth. So the question remains, if God was this furious against the Nephilim, why would he let any trace of them survive through the great flood? The answer is no reason. It makes no sense. If he let them survive, it would mean that the entire point of the flood was a waste. The great flood was made to be a divine reboot and not a half-hearted cleanse. Other theorists argue that if the wives of Noah's sons were tainted, God would have rejected them too. Since the passengers of the ark were deliberately selected for their purity, the theory of the Nephilim surviving till this day through the ark seems like a flop. But if this theory is wrong, why do giants still reappear after the flood? Why does Goliath exist? Why did Og of Bashan reappear? Well, maybe the corruption did not come back through Noah's ark. Instead, maybe it never left in the first place. Ancient texts speak of wars between humans and giants, of brave warriors who stood against impossible odds, of heroes who dared to challenge the tyrannical order. But imagine being asked to join such a rebellion. You're handed a sword, if you can even lift it, and told to march against creatures whose smallest finger is thicker than your entire body. The very notion would be laughable if it weren't so terrifyingly real. The Bible mentions several of these giant killers: David against Goliath, Joshua against the Anakim, Caleb against the sons of Anak. But read these stories carefully, and you'll notice something unsettling. These weren't fair fights. They were miraculous victories against impossible odds, won only through divine intervention. The most famous of these encounters is David's battle with Goliath, but most people miss the crucial details. Goliath wasn't just tall. He was a trained warrior from a race of giants, armed with weapons that no normal human could even lift. His spearhead alone weighed 15 pounds. Now imagine you're in David's position but without his divine calling. You stand before Goliath, and your perspective is that of an ant looking up at a mountain. David's victory wasn't due to superior skill or strength. It was a miracle, but you don't have that divine guidance. This is what resistance looked like in the Age of Giants, a series of miraculous victories punctuating an otherwise hopeless struggle for survival. And miracles, by definition, were rare. According to the ancient texts, this age of giant tyranny couldn't last forever. The corruption had become so complete, the violence so overwhelming, that divine intervention became necessary. The solution was radical: a complete reset of the world through a global flood. But imagine experiencing this salvation from your perspective as a tiny survivor. You wake up one morning to the sound of water, not the gentle patter of rain, but the roar of oceans falling from the sky. Genesis 6:13 states, "So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them." As the waters rise around you, you realize this flood isn't just about cleansing humanity's sin. It's about exterminating the giants who had made your life a living nightmare. For the first time in your life, you see them afraid. And there's a terrible beauty in watching creatures who once treated you like insects now thrashing helplessly in the divine deluge. But you also realize that this salvation might kill you too. But here's the terrifying part. The flood didn't eliminate all of them. Numbers 13:33 states, "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." This was written after the flood. The giants had returned. So imagine your horror when, generations later, you see those familiar shadows on the horizon again. The nightmare you thought was over has returned, and this time they're angry. What this means is that the Age of Giants wasn't just a prehistoric nightmare. It continued throughout human history. Every time your people began to flourish, the giants would return to remind you of your place in the world. So let's return to our original question. Why wouldn't you survive the Age of Giants? The answer isn't just about their size or strength, though those would certainly be insurmountable obstacles. It's about the complete psychological breakdown that living in such terror would inevitably cause. Think about how you react when you encounter something genuinely threatening in today's world: a dangerous animal, a violent criminal, a natural disaster. Your heart races, your hands shake, adrenaline floods your system. Now imagine living with that level of terror every moment of every day. In a world ruled by giants, you would never sleep soundly. Every sound in the night could be a footstep. Every shadow could be a massive hand reaching down to pluck you from your hiding place. Your nervous system, designed to handle occasional bursts of fear, would be constantly flooded with stress hormones. Within weeks, you'd be suffering from what we now recognize as severe PTSD, but there would be no recovery because the trauma never ends. You'd watch fellow survivors break down one by one. Some would become catatonic, simply sitting in corners and rocking back and forth. But perhaps worse than the constant fear would be the absolute helplessness. Humans are problem solvers by nature. We face challenges and find ways to overcome them. But in the Age of Giants, there are no solutions, only temporary delays of the inevitable. You can't fight beings whose fingernails are harder than your strongest weapons. You can't hide from creatures who can reshape the landscape at will. You can't negotiate with beings who see you as insects. Every survival instinct you possess would be not just useless, but counterproductive. The fight response? Suicide. The flight response? A brief postponement of death. The freeze response? You become an easy target. You would be trapped in a world where every natural response to danger only makes your situation worse. The psychological damage from this kind of absolute powerlessness would destroy your mind long before the giants destroyed your body. As your mind gradually fragments under the constant stress, you begin to notice changes in yourself and the other survivors. The constant malnutrition has left you weakened and skeletal. Your hair has turned grey from stress even if you're young. Your hands shake constantly and you jump at the slightest sound. You've developed what we might call giant paranoia, the inability to enjoy even a moment of peace because you're constantly scanning the horizon for massive silhouettes. You can't look at a distant cloud without wondering if it might be a giant's head. The few other survivors you encounter are in similar states. Conversations consist mainly of whispered warnings about giant sightings and increasingly desperate plans for finding food or shelter. No one talks about the future anymore because everyone understands there isn't one. You've all accepted that you're living on borrowed time, that your continued existence is nothing more than an oversight that will eventually be corrected, and perhaps most terrifyingly of all, part of you begins to hope for that final encounter. Death starts to look like mercy compared to indefinite survival in this nightmare world. So why wouldn't you survive the Age of Giants? Because survival in such a world requires something no human possesses: the ability to exist indefinitely as prey without losing your sanity, your humanity, or your will to live. Modern humanity has grown comfortable with the illusion of dominance. We've forgotten the terror our ancestors knew, the constant awareness that there are things in this world far more powerful than ourselves. We've forgotten what it means to truly fear. But in the Age of Giants, you would remember, every day would be a lesson in humility, in insignificance, in the true pecking order of creation. And eventually, that lesson would break you. Whether you died from starvation, disease, accident, or simply being noticed by one of your giant overlords, your death would be meaningless in the grand scheme of things. You would be forgotten instantly, your brief existence no more significant to the giants than the death of an ant is to you. The question isn't whether you would survive the Age of Giants. The question is whether that age ever really ended at all. And if it hasn't, whether you're prepared for what's coming next. Because according to the ancient prophecies, the giants are destined to return to open rule over the earth. And when they do, modern humans, soft, weak, and completely unprepared for such a reality, will fare even worse than their ancient ancestors. The ancients tried to warn us. They left their messages carved in stone, written in texts, embedded in the very landscape of our world. They told us about the giants who once ruled the earth, who filled it with violence, who saw humanity as nothing more than insects to be crushed or consumed. But we've chosen to see their warnings as myths, their testimonies as legends, their fears as primitive superstitions. Perhaps that's exactly what the giants have been waiting for us to do. Because in the Age of Giants, ignorance isn't bliss, it's extinction.